Welcome back to Running with Coach Tori.
And Jeff.
And we are bringing you the running news of the week to entertain you on your long run, or just to give you something to chat with your run group about, or just so you can chat with us in the comments on our YouTube. We've got you covered with the news. So I actually did have the slightest bit of news. Friend of the podcast, friend of the family, Katie ran, the Boulder, I should have figured out what the name of this was. Some Boulder race, the Boulder 10K.
Really?
Yes, what is it? The Boulder, this is why I was all messed up. It's the Boulder 10K. She ran a great race over the weekend. Connor Mance won for the third time in a row that race. I have to ask if she saw him. But also, she posted a picture that she got a beer at the mile 3, hydration station or whatever, which seems crazy. I also have to ask her about that, how that went. But then I was thinking, I feel like people have said in the past about crazy things that people have given out, at an aid station or whatever. And I feel like more so at ultras, they talk about these things. And then I was thinking of The Office, which I reference more than once on this podcast, which isn't necessary because it's such an old show. But I think there was a bit where Michael Scott was talking about giving out Jell-O shots in a marathon or whatever. But what's the weirdest thing you've gotten at an aid station? Because I feel like you've done that, right? You've gotten some weird things.
I don't know that I've gotten any that weird. No, I mean, I can't think of anything unusual. The only thing I can recall was I was going to eat a bunch of gels at one, and the guy told me don't do that. You're going to have a bathroom issue in the next couple minutes. So that's the only thing I can recall about aid station discussions. They're not usually that long.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a bunch of I do know there's a bunch of races, ones that has donuts and other ones. So I haven't done any of those, though.
No. Yeah, no, I'm so boring. I barely even get water from the aid stations because I bring all my own stuff. But I think maybe at the marathon we ran, I grabbed pretzels at one point because I was hungrier than I thought I was going to be. But yeah, no, I'm I don't have any fun. I didn't get homemade cookies or drinks, none of that stuff.
All right, well, cookies does remind me that my first marathon, New York City marathon, at the halfway point, I did get some homemade cookies from somebody, chowed those down because I was starving and hadn't done any nutrition or hydration.
Oh my gosh.
So it was right before I bonked. But yeah, so I blamed the cookies, but reality was it wasn't the cookies.
It was you. The cookies may have saved you another 30 seconds.
Yes, it was the lack of training, that probably a lack of long runs. I think I did a ton of training. I just didn't do I think I may have tried one 20-mile run, and I was basically spent at mile 18 or 19.
Well, yeah, I think my goal is going to be to find some fun, whether it is to try a beer mid-race or – because I've never done any of those the taco mile or pizza mile or any of those things, but I feel like I got to – them on my list of fun races to do. And then the only other news I have, even though this is at this point will be a whole week behind, but we are recording the day after Memorial Day. And I wanted to ask you because there is now crossover from the CrossFit world to running, as there sometimes is. But do you know or remember the Murph workout?
I do remember the name of the Murph workout, along with the Fibonacci and a few other names, but I don't remember what the Murph workout was.
So Murph is, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a Baltimore running club takes on the Murph Challenge in honor of Memorial Day. So anybody who knows CrossFit or does CrossFit, there are benchmark workouts and hero workouts. And some of them, Murph is probably the most well-known, that it is always attached to Memorial Day. And almost every gym I've ever met or known anyone at, they do a whole special thing. Everybody comes in at one time. Everybody does the Murph workout. They've done it at the games before. It was always a big deal. And so it is, you wear a weighted vest. I believe girls is 14 pounds. Men couldn't tell you how much it's supposed to be. More than that. And so you run a mile in your weighted vest. You do 100 pull-ups in your weighted vest. 200 push-ups in your weighted vest, 300 squats in your weighted vest, and then you run another mile. So, interesting that not only CrossFit people are doing this, but now like other places are doing it. My fear is that if a running group full of just runners is now going out and doing this high volume of different kinds of movements, like that is dangerous. But like kind of fun to do a certain kind of workout. Like, that's a fun thing for a running club to branch out into.
Did you say
Thoughts on
100?
Murph? Would you
Did
want
you
to
say
do Murph?
100 pull-ups?
100 pull-ups. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
supposed to be straight through. So you're not supposed to break them up. Like you're not supposed to do like 5 pull-ups, a couple push-ups, some squats. Like you're supposed to do the 100, then the 2, then the 3.
Yeah, because you have to break up the 100 pull-ups. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, besides, um, the elitist athlete in the world, there's not many people that can do 100 straight pull-ups.
Right. Right. So are you going to do it? Would you do it?
I would do it. Yeah, I mean, it seems like one of those like interesting, motivational type things where you do get to say, okay, hey, it's not just running. Don't just focus on one thing. You got to focus on multiple things, all of which is beneficial to your longevity. So, yeah, I would do something like that.
We'll have to schedule Murph next year. We'll
Yeah,
do
no, I'm in.
a Murph meetup. So Maria, a friend of mine who does CrossFit, did Murph obviously yesterday, but a couple weeks ago we were going to train. She's like, I want to do just like a practice, make sure I'm ready for it or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it with you. And thank goodness the kids did not cooperate for us to actually be able to work out, because I put on a weighted vest and tried to just jog briefly the day before, because I was like, I want to make sure it doesn't just like rub my shoulders raw or whatever it was. And I was like, wow, okay. Forget the fact that I have to do pull-ups, push-ups, squats. Like, I'm actually not going to easily run a mile in a weighted vest.
No,
So,
I mean, you're
yeah,
talking about 10-minute exercise minimum, probably with a weighted vest on. I mean, yeah, it does sound like it's a good time. It does sound like it's a little bit of a risk of injury if you haven't built up to it,
indeed.
just because of the extra weight and pounding on the joint. So I would say it's something you definitely want to train for, and not just throw it on there and say, well, maybe I'll avoid it rubbing my shoulders. Maybe you need to do a little bit more prep than that.
For sure. Yeah, maybe next year I'll try it, to train a little bit ahead of time. But that's all the news I got.
All right, well,
What do you
good.
have?
Then I got a couple things. One is just to tag on to your sort of interesting run with aid stations. It's not necessarily aid station related, but I did see a list of the 9 half marathons that everyone must do. And again, they're all around the world, so we'll say that it's going to be hard for people to do these. Number one, and you can pick which one is your favorite. Great Wall Half Marathon. You can probably guess where that is. Great Wall,
In
China.
China.
Yeah. All
Somewhere.
right. Got that one. Number two. So again, and that was probably, I would think, maybe the most iconic in my mind.
It sounds
That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, that does sound pretty cool because you're running on top of the wall. Because it's not a fence. It looks like I'd say it's maybe 10 feet wide, 6 to 10 feet wide wall on top. So you're running on top of the wall. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, number two, I referenced this a minute ago. Run for Donuts Half Marathon in the USA. This is held in New York. This is one we could do. It's held in June. I don't know that I would be ready for that. It's June 14th. Um, it's along the Hudson River, so that one there is one that, interesting food to eat anyway, donuts at the aid stations. You
Oh,
up for that one?
that's kind of fun. So there's just donuts along the way.
Yeah, I think you're just supposed to eat donuts at each aid station. I don't
Do
know
you
whether
have
it's,
to?
I don't know whether it's, I don't know whether you can't move on until you eat a donut. But
Right.
let's see, it says there's not a lot of details on here, so I won't try to go into speculation.
Yeah.
Suncoast Half Marathon in Australia. Before we got on, we talked about Australia because it's got probably the world's deadliest animals, and so you don't want to go there. I'll say that's probably ruled out for you.
Yeah, you won't catch me there. We just decided that earlier.
Royal Parks half marathon. Royal, can you guess where that is? Royals, Royal,
England?
yes, London,
Okay.
UK. Um, it sounds like you're from London. So that one there, I don't know that I'm that intrigued by that one. I mean, royalty, blah blah blah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All these great things.
Uh,
The Angkor Wat International Half Marathon in Cambodia. So that goes through some very ancient temples. I don't know, man. Do you get really jazzed up by temples?
so I'm currently watching Lost again right now because I'm always outdated with whatever I'm talking about. And I feel like that feels real lost-ish. Like I'm picturing in my head like lost jungle, different structures. So in this exact moment, that sounds almost intriguing. But then, yeah, if I actually had to go inside of like some old narrow temple or something, like that's not happening. So yeah,
Wow. I mean, a reference to Lost. I mean, does anyone even know what that is anymore?
I know. What year do I live in? I don't
Yeah, is this 1980? I mean, maybe 90s. I don't know. It has to be more than 20 years old, right?
Yes. Well, actually, exactly. I think it came out like 2004.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
so Josh has never seen it either. So we're watching Lost. Yeah, we're old. We're way late.
yeah, man. Wow. All right, number
Don't
seven on
spoil
the
the
list.
end.
Number seven is the Siberian Ice Half Marathon.
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, you can just rule that one out. There's a picture of a woman with frost all over her face. Her eyelashes are almost frozen shut. It's in Russia. That's where Siberia is.
Nope.
I mean, first of all, you want to go to Russia. I mean, it just doesn't sound like I mean, I'm sure it's beautiful. I'm not gonna poo-poo Russia. I'm sure it's gorgeous in many places, but Siberia is probably not one of them. That's held in January of 2026, so we still have a chance to train for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on all the cold, I think.
Number eight on my list, the Yizjiang half marathon in China. You may remember this one because I referenced it uh, several episodes ago. This is the one they actually had the AI bots in.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so that one is being held in next year in April of 2026. So again, you definitely could be in shape for that one. Got to make a lot of arrangements to go to China, though. It does seem like a little bit of like a lot to do to go to do a half marathon.
But I do feel like now is the time if you're gonna enter a robot versus person race, like this year, next year, and I feel like after that, there's like no shot people are winning. You know what I mean? So like, get in
Yeah,
while you can. I don't know.
yeah, beat them while you can. I like that. I mean, that should be their sort of motto.
Yeah.
Number nine, final one, the Bermuda Triangle Challenge Half Marathon. Ah, I'm not a, I don't know. I'm not a I don't know. I'm a science guy, so I don't really love the mystery, the mystique of like the Bermuda Triangle. So I'm not in for that one. Not because I'm afraid. I'm not scared.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, I'm a science guy, and I'm above all that.
I don't even really get it. But yeah, it is. Are you just running the race? Yeah, like, hello, am I okay? No, your computer didn't freeze. I just glitched as a person. Um, is there any
It,
more
it,
detail on that race? Like, where are you running in the ocean?
well, yes, well, that's a good point. I mean, the Bermuda Triangle is, I guess, 3 points
Because
that
it was
creates
like
a
the
triangle.
ocean
Most of that is
ships.
ocean. I
Yeah.
think Bermuda's cashing in on that concept by, I
Ah,
think they're either in the Bermuda Triangle or they're one of the points in the Bermuda Triangle. I should have researched Bermuda Triangle before we started this podcast. Um,
I need to know
but
more.
the race is actually in Bermuda. It's actually on the land. It's not in the ocean.
Good.
uh, it must cross over the triangle in some way, shape, or form. So I'm out for that one. You're out. You're in.
Yeah, I'm probably out. I mean, I don't know. I'm not loving the ocean, so too close
No,
to the water.
no, too much water in the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, not a fan. Bring on the donut one. The donut one, probably it. Because you also, I'm not trying to travel like anywhere, so
Yeah, you want to stay close. And that was the seemed like that was the closest one. So I
Yeah.
think that one's got a shot, not for this year, but maybe for 2026. Yeah,
What year
2026.
is this? Are we 2025? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually I had to hesitate for a moment what year we were in.
Lost got me all messed up. I'm like, where are we?
Yes, exactly. What year is this?
Yeah.
Um, so
Jumanji reference. Ah.
yeah, so
Okay.
I'll go with some real news, and I'll call it real news. Is a bit of a shaky comment. So I did see an hour and a half interview with a doctor that's tied to this Nike Breaking4. So as you recall, we did mention it on the podcast probably 6 or 7 episodes ago. Was Nike had announced in April they were doing with Faith Kipyegon a Breaking4, similar to the breaking 2 hours in the marathon. They're now trying to break 4 minutes in the mile for women, and Faith is the competitor that's Nike's sort of championing that with. So there was an interview with this Dr. Andy Jones. Um, he went through. He didn't give a lot of details because I think they're still experimenting on what they're going to do as far as pacers and stuff. So I was looking for like a lot of details. He was keeping his cards close to the vest, but he did give some information out. So just going through some of the things that he hit in his highlight for everyone's benefit. Um, you know, Faith has the world record now at 4:07:64. So she's really got to take 7 seconds off. And what we talked about in that podcast is it took about 20 years for men to get 7 seconds off the world record. So what Nike and Faith are trying to do is unprecedented. And just to further, I guess, accentuate that is the world record before Faith set it was 4:12. Was Safan Hassan from 2000, maybe 19, somewhere in that range. Um, so you're really talking about a world record of 4:12 just 5 or 6 years ago. So again, I guess I'm going to tell you that my spoiler right away is I don't think it can be done in this shorter period of time. So I'm saying it's going to be a fail, but I'm going to say fail just from a standpoint of not breaking 4. I still think she'll set a world record again. I just have a hard time believing she can get down, take 7 seconds off. I mean, it's about 50 meters on the track.
Wow.
So
Okay, that's farther than
yeah,
I was picturing. Yeah.
yeah, it's about 50. I think I did the math. It was like 51 meters is 7.65 seconds. So that would get you down to 3:59, 59. So um, yeah, so it's 50 meters, and she won about 50 meters. And by just the record, Nikki Hills was actually in that world record race. I know you're a big fan of hers.
Oh yeah, how did Nikki do?
Well, she was like sixth, 4:16, set an American record. And there was a bunch of records set in the world record run that Faith did a couple years ago. I guess it's 2023.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. So there were probably a bunch of national records. Nikki set the American record at 4:16. So again, well behind what Faith is already running at. So some of the things that they did sort of give out a little bit was, they're taking a hard look at the aerobic versus anaerobic capacity of Faith, and you know, both of those come into play in sort of a mile run. So you need to have, your both your anaerobic capacity at its max level as well as your aerobic. So being able to run with and without oxygen. So it really comes down to the fuel you're using to burn. Um, her critical speed is important. Well, what can she run the 800 meters at to give her, there's probably a baseline you need to have in order to achieve a 4-minute mile. Um, they talked about pacing and drafting. They didn't give a lot out, but whether they would use men or not. What comes to mind is in her world record run, there was a pacer. There were two pacers that she had. One was able to stick for about half the race, so 800 meters they dropped out, and one made it to about 1,000 meters. So she really ran the last lap and a half on her own. So I mean, it gives you some indication that there is, with paces, you need to have either people subbing in and subbing out, or you'd have to have men do the pacing. And I feel like they were just sort of. Do you feel like that would taint it? Like if you had a men pacers, do you feel like that sort of discounts the achievement?
I mean, I don't think so because I think. Oh, well, I guess if the goal is a world record attempt, so I guess it's what is the goal? If the goal is set a new world record, or if the goal is run a sub 4, because like that was the whole thing with Breaking 2 was like this wasn't going to count as the record because we did all these other things to make it work that kind of like disqualify it or whatever. So yeah, if I think we're just looking at the goal of going sub 4, that makes sense, and I think that totally works. Again, we get into like all the rules of it all, and then that kind of changes things. Because I imagine they're also probably going to use a shoe that like no one else has yet, or is not allowed, or whatever it is, right? So like there's going to be other things that would make it different than what we can all do in a race anyway. So yeah, I think that kind of makes the most sense too, because I think if we're subbing people in and out much like they did in Breaking 2, it's just that's so much like commotion, distraction, room for error, you know what I mean? So yeah, I
Yeah,
would imagine.
no, that's a great point because he did talk about that because the host was talking about like with Breaking 2, they did have runners subbing in and out.
Hmm.
The Dr. Andy Jones said, yeah, but that's much harder when you're dealing with a track and you're dealing with the pace that's being run. To sub someone in and out at that pace is very, very challenging.
Hmm.
Um, to get it right, to not have some mix up, someone stumble, there's a lot of things that can go wrong trying to sub somebody in and out um, in a 400-meter style track. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they did talk a lot about like how do you find 7 seconds, right?
Right.
So, and that's what this is all about, right? It is interesting because it is the science. You mentioned shoes. She'll probably wear spikes.
Hmm.
So unlike the mass marketing you can get out of maybe a marathon type shoe, right? Because a lot of people buy those. There's a lot of marathoners out there. Spikes, isn't for the general masses, generally speaking, right? It's really for the elite athletes that are running on a track. Um, and I'm sure your high schoolers and college athletes as well that would wear those, but it's not the same level of a market as you do with maybe a distance running shoe.
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
But yeah, he did say certainly Nike's working on some stuff. I'm sure that they'll break out. I can't imagine it'll be like it was with Breaking 2 with the carbon fiber plates and those things that were just evolving the super shoes that were coming out at the time. I think they
Hmm.
already have super shoes for spikes. Again, they may have something unique and different, but probably not quite as groundbreaking as maybe they had back in 16, 17, 18 when that first happened. Um, so I thought the pacing and the drafting, all the questions that they're trying to answer around that is some of the areas they're focused on. Again, not surprising. Um, be interesting to see how it plays out. He did say even pacing is probably from a scientific standpoint the best answer. Um, where you're running really 60 seconds for each quarter. But typically speaking, that doesn't necessarily happen. I mean, you might get a second or two on either end, maybe in the first lap where people start off fast, and the final lap where they're sort of going all out. You might find a little bit of room to get some tweaking there, but you're trying to run it as even as you can from an efficiency standpoint.
Right.
Um, they're looking for ideal conditions. Um, so it's going to be in Paris, France, and she did run a world record there previously in the 1500 meters. So they are considering a lot of what Faith wants
Hmm.
in what she's comfortable with, where she's been before. I guess temperatures that time of year will be beneficial, but they're also looking at time of day. I mean, it's probably going to be AM, I would imagine. Um, where it's cooler. But he did say that your circadian rhythm your peak performance, typically speaking, would be late afternoon.
Hmm.
So I still think they're looking at, the timing and what the ideal situation would be. Again, just trying to squeeze every fraction of a second out of this. I thought that was interesting. They did talk about priming and warming up. Um, that I think the ideal warm up is one. There is a huge benefit to warming up. Like, so when you look at your aerobic and anaerobic capacity and triggering those things before you put out your max effort does give you a benefit. You need certainly time to recover. So, he said ideally you're looking at running maybe 200 meters at race pace and then giving yourself adequate time. Maybe that's 20 minutes of recovery, so you've fully recovered. So it's a sort of that balancing act between the proper warm up and not sort of using up your energy. Um, and you talked about clothing, I think was the other thing. Bicarb was mentioned, so nutrition. So we've talked about bicarb before. He did say bicarb is. He mentioned beetroot too as another
Hmm.
tool. In the sort of the nutrition bag. I've heard of beetroot before, and from those muscle and fitness podcasts and stuff, but I've never used it as a supplement. But even clothing, he said that again, everything seems like it's a balancing act, right? There's clothing, you want to make sure it's comfortable, you want to make sure it's breathable, you want zero aerodynamic drag, and you sort of try to get that so you keep your athlete cool, but you also don't create any wind resistance by having airflow going through the clothing. So interesting. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it. It's coming up in June, so I think for anyone who's into this type of thing, which I am, you'll look. I think it's late June, June 26th, if it comes to mind, is sort of the timing of this. So don't quote me on that, but I think that's sort of where, generally speaking, the timing is.
Yeah, I'm excited to not only see the result, but I hope they turn around like the documentary or whatever kind of coverage they have pretty quickly, because I think maybe not even more so, but at least as interesting as however it ends up is like seeing actually, what all they did, what was the process. I think it'd be nice to see or hear from her of like the difference, like what actually was different from what she had been doing, because she's like been a super successful athlete for like we've talked about this before, a long period of time. So you would like to think that like her process is pretty fine tuned for her specifically, and it's, she's found what works for her. So yeah, I think it'd be cool to see like, okay, she found what works for her, but what is these people who are just trying to make this one result happen, what do they find that hopefully works slightly better? And then if she's going to take any of that, whatever it would be, if it is the nutrition or clothing or shoes, whatever, like take that then obviously on to the rest of her career. So yeah, I'm excited to see the process for sure.
Yeah, no, same here. I think one thing he did mention that I thought was interesting. They sort of started on this about 18 months ago. They met at Nike, and Faith was there at the same time, and they sort of met and discussed this concept. So it has been in the works a long time, even though it was only announced maybe a little over a month ago. I think it was April 23rd was the announcement date. So I thought that was interesting. That's been going on that long. He did say also that historically she's been a 1500 meter and 5000 meter specialist, so to some degree. So competing in both of those sort of compromises to some degree both, right? One's a little bit more of a distance run, one's more of a sprint, short distance, middle distance type effort. And if you're trying to do great in one, you really are going to sort of compromise the other. So he did say that her focus is now solely on this. So it has been in the works for a while, because if you can imagine, right, to focus on one thing like the 1500 meters, or in this case the mile, when announced on the 23rd, to do it 3 months later, I think he even said at the time, like that's a pretty short window from a training standpoint. So I feel like she's probably already been training for this moment for the last 6 months plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have much else. I mean, I think I did have. There was a Diamond League race this past week. Do you care about Diamond League?
No, I am solely focused on Grand Slam track in Philly. Be there.
Yes.
Although by the time you hear this episode, we'll have already been there. So
Yeah.
hopefully we had a good time.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm sort of like I haven't followed the Diamond League, and it's probably because it's international. It's they were in I don't know Morocco or Monaco. I don't know which one they were in, but they were in China for the first two races. It's again, it's got an international feel to it. I don't see the results. Real time. I don't watch them. I probably should. But a couple of things I thought were noteworthy. I did see Fred Curley was now running the Diamond League. Remember Fred Curley, right, from last week's episode where we talked about him allegedly punching his girlfriend in the face? And he was on Grand Slam track, but no longer on Grand Slam track. So I guess Diamond League doesn't have the same standards maybe as Grand Slam has.
Yikes.
I'm just kidding. He was there though. He finished third in the 100 and the 200. And Femke Ball, who I'm a big fan of, she competes in the 400-meter hurdles. I did look at her time. Her time was 52:46. Sydney McLaughlin's time was 52:07 in Miami. So head to head, I think Sydney probably still wins, but Femke is right there. Well, I want to see them in the same event competing. I don't know when that will be. If we have to wait till the Olympics to see that again or not, or whether the World Championships maybe there's a possibility maybe there. That's it. That's all I got. There was a couple other. Oh, there was an American who won the 1,500-meter on the men's side. Jonah Koch. I'm going to go with Koch.
Okay.
Koech. I'm sure there's actually is a Koch. I don't know. I'm sure I'm totally mispronouncing that, and I should know it, but I don't. He ran a 7-second personal best. I never heard the guy before. I mean, you think about the 1,500 meters, you got Jared Naguse, you've got Cole Hocker, you got a bunch of guys in the U.S. that are at that distance that are more well known. But he did win, American, so I thought that was notable. And a 7-second personal best. He ran 3:31. So impressive.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's all I got. That's all I got on news today. It was a kind of a quiet week.
Quiet week. Which races are you most excited for Grand Slam this weekend?
1,500 meters. No doubt. Easy answer for me. I love it. It's the one with Josh Kerr, Cole Hocker, Jared Naguse. It's sort of like only one who's not there is
your favorite.
Yeah, he's nursing an Achilles injury a little bit. Like I guess he's I think he delayed maybe his opening race or two in Europe. So didn't seem like it was too serious. I think he's had some Achilles issues in the past. So I think they were just being cautious. So looking forward to seeing him. I think he's going to run a Diamond League event in Norway, maybe in June.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, if that's what you got. Oh, how about me? I don't have any injuries, but I'm also barely running.
Not on the injury front.
Again,
which event are you looking forward to on Grand Slam track?
But how about you? You're back on your running game now that you've done with your travel?
I am. I'm back. I'm back at it. I'm doing a lot of yard work, so I'm missing a few workouts here and there, but I'm still getting some activity done.
Yeah, well, that's good. On that note, though, we are getting into our summer schedule. So after you hear this episode next week, we will no longer have a standard recording time. So that's not your problem, listeners, but that is our problem. And we are hoping to still put out weekly or every other week episodes. But make sure you are subscribed, whether it's on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. So whenever we do have stuff, it's coming for you. Otherwise, you'll have to just keep checking back to see when things are coming out, but hoping to come out with episodes as often as possible. But yeah, summer is going to be a little wonky, but I also hope everyone is out enjoying the summer and you don't have to be hanging around watching podcasts while you're at the beach beach or the pool or the amusement parks, whatever it is. But either way, if there's anything specific you guys want us to talk about, because we won't just be doing news since some things will be, a little off on timing, any kind of stuff, let us know. We will try to get to it. And 5 stars only, of course.